Welcome back to Champ Talk with Branden Hudson, guys. I'm happy you're here with me on this close to Christmas day. I don't know when you're going to see this, if it's after Christmas or before, but while I'm recording this, we're getting close. Like we do at all episodes of Champ Talk, we ask that you be so kindly to like and subscribe our channels and make sure if you get value out of this, you send it to someone who would. Also, if you're that kind, give us a review. You know what I mean? Let us know what we can do better, how well we're doing, what to talk about, all the above. But we do appreciate everybody. It's been about 60 episodes now. Is that right? Yeah, it's been about 60 episodes since we've done Champ Talk 2.0. So it's a pretty cool milestone, something I'm proud of, and something I'm proud to give you guys and deliver value. But let's get right at it today, man. Another solo edition. And listen, man, I've been wanting to talk about this for a little bit. It's something that's more just perspective driven, man. Just perspective, experience, and things that, you know, I can share with you guys for you guys to kind of hopefully take some value and make some changes, make some things happen, stay on the course or whatever. But man, listen, we don't know what, man, did you hear that? I was like, hit him with a yodel. My voice went up. Let's back up. We don't know what is around the corner of the next opportunity or the next door of fear or options that we have. We don't know what that's going to turn into. Where am I going with this? Man, I was talking to some students not too long ago, and in typical Branden Hudson fashion, I get on my soapbox quick, man. It doesn't take me long. You get some pre-workout in me, you give me a coffee, you get something stimulating the caffeine and the juices, and I'll just start talking, and all of a sudden it'll be on a deep dive of, you know, how impactful your life is and what you can do to change it and how to upgrade and all these things. And I try very hard to refrain from telling people what they need to do and what you should do. I know it doesn't sound like that, but nobody's really wants to hear how to live. I work, and I'm not always perfect, so, you know, flame me if you want. I also try very hard to be intentional with the actual words that I say, even though I stutter a lot. I say words that don't even have the right meaning. I mean, when I look at these reels and look at listen to the podcast over again, I say some shit, man. You know what I mean? Like stuff I don't even make sense. No, something don't even make sense. And if you break it down into a soundbite, you're like, what the hell did he just say? But then when you know me, or you're used to me, or you follow me, or you listen to the entire podcast, you'll be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But I was talking to some students, and in my typical fashion, getting on my soapbox, and you know, they were wondering, or they weren't wondering. I was bringing up the fact of why I'm just so life or death every day. Like, if you know me, if you're around me, I am a class clown. I am constantly cutting up, making jokes, saying the dumbest shit, having fun, making fun of everybody, you know, making fun of myself, just having fun, man. I'm a kid at heart. I tell everybody, like, the kids' classes who I really connect with the most because my maturity level is about, you know, anywhere from a 9 to 13-year-olds. And it just is one of those things for me that I love life. You know what I mean? I love life. I love humans. I love people. And just as much as I'm so on that end of the spectrum of being funny and charismatic and all that, every day is like life or death for me, right? Every day is like make or break. You know, if I don't go out here and go as hard as I possibly can in the paint and leave everything out on the field or out on the mats or out in the cage or wherever I'm at with my life, with my training, with, you know, how I love my family, my friends, then, you know, that's the end of the world. And it's such a radical extreme on both ends, right? Because in one minute I'm like, hey, carefree, happy-go-lucky, chill. And the next minute I'm like, yo, it's going to be, you know, you got to go all the way in. You got to work all this. You got to do that. You can't let go of nothing. You know, you can't let nothing slide. It's a very, very weird dynamic. Maybe because I'm on the cusp of the zodiac signs. My birthday's 4/20, right? Go figure. No, I don't partake, used to, and obviously you know my history, but my birthday's 4/20, so I understand that I'm on the cusp of the Aries and Taurus, and I looked up the zodiacs. I'm not into it like super heavy, but it's I think it's all connected. And I looked at it one time, and man, I mean, I think it was Wikipedia or Urban Dictionary or maybe just Google, and it gave me a description of what a person is on the cusp of Aries and Taurus zodiac sign. And man, I mean, it was like to the T, nailed me. I mean, it was like extremes of opposite ends of each sign. And I was like, man, that sounds familiar. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's just life experiences, I don't know. But I do know this. I do know for a fact that we don't know what would happen. And we don't know what will happen and what anything could happen once we walk through these doors of fear and of things that we want to try or want to start, want to create, want to build. I love building. I love creating. I love building things in business. I love building things. I'm not a very good builder. Ironically enough, I suck as a man when it comes to like being a handyman or building anything. But when it comes to building, a business or building a culture or, building a champion or building people up or building a family, man, I'm really good at that. I've been very good at that all my life. And I can always get better. So please don't take me as a conceited asshole. And I said all this because, when I started mixed martial arts and started that journey, right, I just did it to want to get in shape. When I was a kid, I always wanted to box, but we never did it. And, whether we were playing football and basketball and baseball, my parents didn't want me to do it. Maybe I was too chicken shit. I don't know. I never boxed when I was a kid. And I just loved, the UFC. I loved mixed martial arts. And I wanted to, you know what I mean? I grew up an athlete and I got out of shape. So I wanted to get into shape. And those were the workouts that were best for me. And we didn't have an MMA gym at the time. If there was, it didn't last very long in Salisbury. I just had some buddies that were working out, in the back of their homes and, with homemade dojos. And I spent some time down at other places, at karate schools and things like that. And I didn't get into combat sports to fight. I got into it because I wanted to look like a fighter. I love the lean look. I love the six pack. That's what I wanted. You know what I mean? I'd gained so much weight, post graduation and being in the streets. And it was just one of those things where it was like nothing could really connect with me. And, some of you guys know the story, man. The turning point, there was a couple of turning points that made me want to compete. Again, at the time, I'm training with a friend of mine, you know what I mean? And I go to him, his name's Trevor Howard. I go to him, I'm like, hey man, I just want to look like a fighter. I just want to get in shape, and you're doing your MMA thing or your karate thing. I want to just come in there and train. The guy was charging me $10 a session. I mean, he was very generous, great guy. I mean, if you know Trevor, he's an awesome dude. Shout out to him. I'll give you a shameless plug. He builds benches with scripture on the benches, scriptures engraved. They're beautiful benches. He donated one to our gym. Get in touch with him. If you don't know how to, get in touch with me. This kid will build you a bench, and they're so awesome. They can be outside, inside. Anyway, so I'm training with him, and I'm starting to feel alive again. I'm 29, 30 years old. I'm starting to feel alive again. I'm starting to get in shape again. I'm having that awakening, and again at this point, I was living five different lives. I was a big time drug dealer, as I've said many times. I was working at a body shop where I was the second guy in command. I didn't do any of the body work. I just wrote the estimates. I dealt with the insurance companies. I dealt with making the company money, making the body technicians money, and keeping the customer happy. So I had all these. I mean, I was the guy. I was, you go back a few champ talks, you'll hear me talk about that with Matt Miller. I was a husband. I was a father, and I also had a mistress, you know what I mean? And, was doing that. So I was living, 5 different lives, 6 when you add, I became the little local, hometown fighter. Right. And that's not something, none of this is what I'm bragging about or happy about. It's just the life that I was living. I wasn't a great father, or I wasn't the best father, and I certainly wasn't a good husband back then. Damn good in the streets and I'm a good partier, you know what I mean? Which sucks to say, but that's just what my story was. Anyway, I started training and I thought about competing, but I didn't think it was a reality. I thought that I was too old. I didn't think I was good enough. And then, I had a situation happen in the drug life where, one of my stash houses had got robbed and a handful of people had, messed up the money. And one of my, guys had gotten arrested, and there was just a series of events on that end that happened. And, then on the other end, there was, my cousin had came home from a jail bit, and he ended up turning his life around and became, a rapper. And I remember vividly one show that he had, shout out to my cousin Andrew, one show that he had performed in front of like 30 of his friends. It was supposed to be like this big show at one of these local bars. It was promoted heavily, and everybody's supposed to show up, and literally 30 of his friends and family showed up. And I don't know if you guys understand this, but for me, I thought there was so much strength in what he did because, yeah, I would much rather want to perform in front of a bunch of people I don't know that are buying tickets to come see me if I was a rapper than try to perform in front of my friends and family who are going to ridicule me, make fun of me, or, you know, whatever, right? That chance. That's the fear that we say in our minds before we do anything cool. And I watched my little cousin, you know what I mean, just go up there and just rip the show like he was performing in front of, tens of thousands of people. And it was that moment between what I was going through in the streets and that moment there, what I saw, I said, if this guy can get up there fearlessly and rap in front of us where, we bust each other's balls and are hard on each other and could, give him so much shit for that, which no one did, which was cool, then I think I can go and, get into a cage and do what I love and fight. And I did that. You know what I mean? That was the turning point for me to want to try it out. You know what I mean? I was having success in the gym. I was loving what I was doing. And, it was time to try it out. And my first fight, you know what I mean, didn't go as bad as, I lost it in a decision, but I knocked the guy out. I mean, dropped the guy, and somehow it was like a weird referee's call where, the rules and the stuff happened, and the fight kept going. So it was best that I lost that fight because obviously it would have went right to my ego, and I would have been like, I don't need no ground game like most dudes who get into that world do. But for me, I didn't get my butt kicked like I saw on TV, and I got a taste of it. You know what I mean? I got a taste of it. And I wanted to try it again. I said, you know what? I think I fought in a 190-pound weight class that first fight. And, I would pepper the guy up standing. But when we got to the ground, which was like kind of the history of my my career, was my ground game was the biggest suspect than anything else. But anyway, I would do very good standing. Ground game wasn't that great, and then coming out in the third round, and all this stuff's on YouTube. It's pretty cool to watch. I come out with a 1-2 and just flatten this guy, and whatever happened with the rules and the call, it just unfortunate part of MMA. It is what it is. I sold like 170 tickets to that fight. That was my first fight. I'm giving the owner like a big knot of drug money. You know what I mean? It's smelling like weed. Because I was selling all these tickets and cash and whatever. But at the end of the day, it was a huge, like, kind of eye-opening thing where, like, I had so many people supporting me, and they didn't know anything about MMA, didn't know anything about me, didn't know anything, but they just wanted to show up and show their support. And I wanted to try it again. I said, you know what? I need to go ahead and go down a weight class. I think I was a little bit too big, work on my ground game better, and go ahead and do it again. And I promise I'm giving you context. I got a reason why I'm giving you all this story. We got plenty of time. Bear with me, folks. So my second fight, I get in there, and they say it's a purple belt, right? This guy's a good dude, man. Kevin Bogman, I know him now. We've talked since. He's a great guy. He's a black belt now, and he was a purple belt then. I was a no belt. You know what I mean? But the ignorance of a young aspiring fighter who is not really versed to that world, because again, in our area, we didn't really have a whole lot to tell us, if any, the levels to it. So I'm like, man, I'm all right. You know what I mean? I could do okay. And if anybody knows, a purple belt and a white belt are extreme differences in jiu-jitsu. But you couldn't tell me nothing. And I go out there, sell about 180, 90 tickets on this fight. You know what I mean? And, and I look back on it, it's so funny, like freaking, it was a tribute to the troops for Stellar Fights. So, I'm coming out with the American flag and the Hulk Hogan theme song. I mean, I look back now like, you fucking idiot. But, hey, you live and learn, and, it was in my experience. Get out there, we high five, you know what I mean? Soon as the bell rings, he throws a punch, I slip, catch him, drop him, you know what I mean? And the rules were different in these first two fights than they were my third, where you couldn't do ground and pound to the head. It was just Delaware's rules at the time. You couldn't do no head kicks. So there was a lot of things that kind of restricted you. I didn't want to go down to the ground with the guy. So, I let him back up, and, I'm trying to knock him out really quick because I'm inexperienced. And he ultimately closed the distance and literally made my arm almost touch the back of my head. And I lost that fight, and I got submitted. And shout out to him. He did a really good job. Great guy. So now I'm 0-2, right? And I'm 0-2 I'm starting to question, why am I doing this? Okay. It's the same thing that you have in anybody that does combat sports or anything for that matter. Every person that I talk to tells me what I should have done, what I need to work on. They've never trained a day in their life, but I need to work on my ground game. I need to work on this. I need to do this. I need to do that. Just giving me the story, and I entertain every one of those conversations because I didn't know no better, and I'm being kind and all the above. But I started questioning, like, why am I doing this? Why am I sitting here, losing in front of all my friends and family? I love MMA. I'm not getting beat up like, I see on TV with the elbows and the blood. So obviously I can do it. I'm so close. I've dropped 2 fighters back to back. I'm so close. You know what I mean? It's just there, right? So I said, 3rd fight, this is it. If I don't win this 3rd fight, I'm done, okay? I'm done with MMA. I'm done with, this was a cool ride, cool to get in there, but I'm a loser. I'm not good at this. All of this negatives talks, not the conversation of what if I win? What if I'm right? What if this is something new that I could get into that could change everything for me, right? And I'm training, I'm doing my thing, and right away, like within the first week or so, they say that the rules are lifted up, that you're allowed to do head kicks standing, and you're allowed to do ground and pound. And if you understand the combat sports world, you know what I mean? If you can't do ground and pound and hit them in the head on the ground, it's really just, once you get to the ground, turns into like a wrestling / jiu-jitsu match, right? And that can be very, very boring, very daunting. It's not very pleasing. It's not very crowd pleasing. And it limits so much, you know what I mean? Because there's an old school saying, I don't know if it still applies because of how everything's been evolved, but there's an old school saying that if you start punching a black belt in jiu-jitsu in the face on the ground, they turn into a brown belt, and you keep punching, they turn back into a purple, and they go down and down and down. Probably not as prevalent nowadays with MMA being such a fundamental sport and so forth, but that was kind of the thing back then, 15, 14 years ago. And so that pumped us up, Eric's in my corner, my friend Conrad and Dante and Jim Willie and these great guys that Trevor, these guys that I've been just blessed to be able to train with and love, and, very good martial artists in all their respective sports. And I'm training like a madman. It's at 170, so it's a better fight weight. And then I got hit with a curveball. I got hit with a really big curveball. We had a good friend of ours who was in our friends group that we cared for dearly. You know what I mean? And she went to wake up her 8-year-old daughter. This was about 6 weeks out from the fight. She went to wake up her 8-year-old daughter to go to school, and her daughter had passed with she passed with a seizure overnight. It was very out of the blue. I mean, they didn't see this coming. It was, oh my gosh, it was devastating. It was devastating for our friend group, devastating for her. It was devastating for the community. You know what I mean? It was just, it just broke all of our hearts, as you would understand. And that hit me hard because I had a 7 and 8-year-old daughter. I had two daughters, 7 and 8 years old, Taylor and Tiaja at the time. And, I didn't train the way that you were supposed to train. I've learned this lesson the hard way. I would be all in for the fight camps for 8 weeks to 10 weeks, maybe 12. And then after the fight, I'd go and, fuck off again and be back, smoking weed, partying, eating like shit, not training and developing. So really all I would do is I would just get ready for fights. And that would be when I would learn. And that's kind of that's not what you do. You're supposed to train year round to develop as a martial artist, as a combat sports practitioner, and then kind of like narrow it down and get like it all focused on, conditioning and game plan and skill set and weaknesses and strengths in your camps. So I really wouldn't feel what I was feeling normally while I was in camp. When I was in camp, I was eating clean. I was working out hard. I was getting my butt kicked. I was humbled every day. It was serious, right? I was fully invested, fully committed. And when you do that, you're really in tune with your emotions. You're really in tune with the spiritual side of yourself. You're really in tune with like everything. And man, that broke me down, dude. That hurt so bad. as it did with, my friend and her family and our friends. And just, it was a dark time. It was a dark time in my whole career then. We were post the housing crisis. So there was a a lot of people were broke and big recession, and a lot of people were going to jail and dying. I mean, there was just so much that was going on, man, in that time. And this happening, 6 weeks after my fight it just hit hard. So as I'm getting ready for this fight, I'm an 0-2 loser. You know what I mean? This is it. If I don't do anything with this, I'm not going to do anything with it. And then my friend loses her daughter, you know what I mean? In such a horrible, horrible way. So somehow we were able to talk our friend to go into the fight. I don't know how they did it. And they were able to talk her into showing up and getting her out of the house and just go and, just take a breath, because God knows what she's going through. And it was a hard time for her. We get paid as amateurs off of sponsorships and off of ticket sales. You get a percentage of your ticket sales. You don't get a purse, right? Not when you're amateur, but you can get ticket sales. And I had sold more tickets on this third fight as an 0-2 loser than any other fight up to date. I was well over 200 tickets. I sold 12, 13 VIP tables. I mean, I would hustle. And man, it was like the night of, the day of, or the day of the fight or the day before the fight. I can't remember. It wasn't planned. It was something that just popped in my head. I'm like, hey man, and I guess I found out soon. I said, hey, I'm willing to donate my purse. And I asked Brad Dalton from the owner of Stellar Fights if he would, match me for this fun. And he, without hesitation, said, yeah. Brad has always been a good dude who's always sat here and helped people out. You know what I mean? And always done it for the good cause. I admire that about him and appreciate that. But I had sat here and, I'd said, let's do that. Okay. And so that was my intention. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was what we could do. It was what we could help. You know what I mean? And I get into this fight and I win this fight, and I win this fight off my back on the ground. So, it was a decision. I think it was a unanimous decision, but I beat this guy from the ground game. I beat him up standing, but I also beat him on the back. It was a tough fight, tough kid, but I came out victorious, and it just changed everything. That moment was probably the most pivotal moment of my career that changed everything, right? It showed me that even though I was an 0-2 loser, and this could have been it, this was going to be, if that fight didn't go that way, I don't know what I would have done next, you know what I mean? Because it wasn't like I was chasing the UFC. I was just trying to win and trying to, know that I can accomplish something difficult and out of my comfort zone. And then to be able to help a friend of mine, you know what I mean? And so basically my mind was like, dude, if I can go get beat up for 15 minutes, you know what I mean? 12 minutes, 9 minutes, whatever the case may be, in front of all my friends, and this gives them a reason to cheer and a reason to be connected and a reason to forget all their problems and have a hometown story, I'm all in. That's how much I cared about my community, cared about my friends, my family, just my town. I'm really prideful of Salisbury. I know Salisbury's got a bad rap about a lot of things. There's a lot of beautiful things in Salisbury and on the Eastern Shore. And I'm very proud of the Eastern Shore. I'm very proud of where I'm from. So for me, I was just like, man, I could go in here and do it like that and fuck it, man. And I'm going to try to win, but everybody else is cheering and they're forgetting their problems. And I'm not trying to make this about like this huge saint story, like I'm special. Man, I just did what I felt right at the time. So it wasn't like I was trying to be anything. I didn't even have social media at this time. I didn't even use it. I think I used Instagram a little bit when it first popped off, just to show pictures of like weird shit and nothing. It wasn't nothing like building a brand or marketing or anything like I do now. And that was the spark. That was the spark that really started catching fire. And then if you fast forward, I won my next fight. I fought for the title. The following fight, dropped it in a close decision. I fought a guy in that fight that was my toughest competition yet. I mean, he was an animal, and he was a real mixed martial artist. So for me, I felt like going the distance with him and having such a war and almost winning, I felt like that was like a proof to prove to me, validation to me that I knew MMA, like I could compete with these guys. And still looking back at my fights, even my last fight, I'm like, oh my gosh, my technique and everything was so, cringeworthy. But, I was getting better and I was loving it. And it was starting to really start changing my life. It also showed me that I could do difficult things. Mixed martial arts and combat sports showed me that I had the ability to appreciate delayed gratification, that I could do difficult things, that I wasn't old, that I was still very, very youthful, very prime, and that my health and my body was very important. But where does this tie into what we talking about in the beginning, what I said in the beginning when I said, you never know where this will lead to? For me right now, being able to do what I'm able to do with this podcast, with people every day online, with people that every day in the gym, the championships, you know what I mean? Like, I know I'm just an amateur champion in MMA. I get that. And it's a local promotion. I'm not acting like I'm fucking the UFC world champion. I definitely use that as a marketing tool to be able to help bring more people in and bring more business and build a brand. But it's still, I don't know any other champions in my family. I don't know any other cage fighter champions in my group. There's only 3 of us from Salisbury, and I created all of them, including myself. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I know a lot of champions in my space, you know what I mean, in the combat sports world. But if you look at the statistics of how many people actually do jiu-jitsu, let alone MMA and so forth, like, there's not a lot of cage fighting champions in the population. So, I mean, that's a big deal. I'm a Hall of Famer with stellar fights. We had Fight of the Year. I won a couple of awards. I was able to, start my own gym. I was able to sit here and speak on stages across the country in rooms that, these people were well more accredited than I was. I worked for the Maryland and Delaware group for 5 years, man, as a fucking recruiter and a coach with no license and no experience in the game. You know what I mean? And was able to really make a name for myself and leave on good terms and leave with a good relationship with these guys. And these guys helped change my life. And so many things that I've been able to do and accomplish and become, all because I took that one actionable item and I stuck with it and I didn't give up. I shouldn't be here right now. If you look at the trajectory of what happened, I fought for that title and lost it, and then I got a title hungry, right? So then I started thinking, like, I'm just about for the championship. I want to win the title. Well, that took me off of my purpose when I was fighting before the title shot and the title opportunity. My purpose beforehand was to give my town and my people in the crowd something to cheer for, something to be happy, take their mind away from the bullshit that they were going through and the life that they were dealing with and the deaths and the drug addictions and all the hard things, the bankruptcies and the foreclosures and all the things that was going on in 2012, 13, 14, right? Like, give them an opportunity to not worry about that shit. Just go cheer for somebody they know, whether they want to see me get my ass whooped or whether they want to see me win or whatever the case would be. For that night, they don't have to worry about their problems. They can watch their boy go out here and get in a cage and, lock in. It was never about my ego until after that fight. After that fight with Sharon, I was like, I got to get the belt. And I lost perspective on why I was doing it. Thus is where you saw the decline. You know what I mean? I lost my next fight. I got hurt. I got staph infection. I got hospitalized. And then I lost another fight where I got injured in the fight. You know what I mean? And in that fight, we were talking shit back and forth at each other and building a fight up, but I was really taking it serious. I thought we were really talking shit. You know what I mean? They were just building a fight. I didn't understand the game. So I'm like all emotional going into this fight. And we go to fight and make it happen. The guy, he kicked me in my knee, which, I don't think it was on purpose, looking back at it now. But it was certainly happened and it was illegal and he should have been disqualified. But it happened, whatever, and and I'm out. Like I already had a knee injury, and I just thought I was done. I was done. This ain't worth it. I'm done. So instead of like following what was prepared for me and offered to me that God gave me and my higher power, he said, "Hey, here's an opportunity." I said, "I'm done." Because why? Because I wanted to fight for the vanity of Branden at that point. I got a taste of that championship, and I wanted to fight for the vanity of Branden at that point. And then it didn't go my way, so then I was ready to quit. And I also didn't fully commit. I wasn't in the gym consistently. I was only in the gym for camps, okay? That's not the way you're supposed to do this. And that's why my ground game never developed. That's why my stand-up stayed mediocre. That's why I never was winning. So I think I think that fight was in March of 2014, I think. And I decided to hang it up. You know, at this point, my wife and I had split up. I think we got a divorce. And, you know, at this point, I fell in love with another person. And, you know, I was trying, you know, I was really kind of really getting my life together, being more present with my kids. You know, I was always there for my kids. I just was, you know, there as, you know, a dad taking care of them, not really there as a dad, like putting that substance in, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's hard to explain, but as a young man, you know, I would always think that, you know, spending all this money to take them on trips and, you know, hanging out with them while they're, you know, doing stuff instead of like going and picking blueberries or going and, you know, really, you know, playing in the floor with them and spending that kind of time. It was always something I had to do, whether I had to go smoke a blunt or get high or whether I had to go bust a lick and go sell some weed or whether I wanted to go out and fucking be a dirtbag. You know, there was always something. So my kids lived with me. I was there for them. I was there with them. I just wasn't present in the time that I was there, if that makes any sense. But I started really turning that corner, and I just was done. You know, I was going to ride off in the sunset, you know, and with this new young, you know, fiance of mine and all these things. She had asked me to marry her in April the following month, and you know, we were getting married, and you know, I had all this stuff kind of locked in, and it was a really average life, to be honest with you. It was a really average life, but I still was drug dealing, and I still wasn't out able to shake that. And then May, so March, I lose the fight, or I get hurt. I decided I'm gonna quit. May, I get proposed to. Wild, I know, wild. I live a wild life. I noticed I said I got proposed to. I know, dude, crazy. And then May, I get hit. And, you know, after 18 years, the police finally, you know, caught up with me. So at that, there was a spiral of events where I lost my job. I lost my connect. I didn't have a car. And I was awaiting trial. And I just spiraled out of control. You know, I spiraled out of control for that whole 3 to 4 months until I went to court and went to jail in November, that following November of 2014. And it was just, you know, my mindset was like, I'm going to jail anyway. Let me just have as much fun as possible instead of, hey, let me get my fucking life in order. But what do you say? What do you do? And at that point, you know, just to give you a little context, my cousin and I started a shoe store because I had a bunch of shoes. You know, I get locked up and start my year's sentence in December in November of that year. You know, shortly after, you know, my then fiance decided that she wanted to break it off. She moves back home, so nobody's in my house and nobody's taking care of my kids. Well, I'm not taking care of kids. The mother's, my ex-wife has done a phenomenal job with our kids. You know, hats off to her as being a good mother support system. But as far as for me, you know what I mean? I'm certainly not present at this point. I'm absent. I'm locked up. I'm state property. You know what I mean? And, you know, what I experienced in jail and what I needed to figure out in there was a whole nother podcast in itself. And maybe I'll tell that story sometime. But for me, it just dawned on me, you know, as I was in there, my cousin didn't need a partner anymore. You know, that relationship diminished. You know, we butted heads. You know, I didn't have a fiance anymore. You know, I had all these things that were going on that was God telling me, like, get your shit straight. And I wasn't letting God lead. I was leading still with all these elaborate ideas. When I was in jail, I was literally going to come home and I was literally going to pick right back up where I left off. That was the plan. Full transparency. I was going to get my connects, you know what I mean, back in line. I was going to fucking go and just be a smarter drug dealer. And I was going to make my money back because I didn't see who would hire a convicted felon. And I'm not going to work at McDonald's. You know what I mean? Nothing wrong with that, but that's how arrogant I was. And I just didn't see no self-worth or no value in myself as to what I was going to be able to do next. And then I had the epiphany, man. I'd gotten a couple of things that happened. I lost my work release privileges. I was on a high level offender or I don't know what they call it, but basically where all the bad guys are at. I was on that tier for 23 days trying to figure out my life. And I got sent back to the block for 5 months and you know, I had to really figure it out. And I had to really figure out what my move was with God and with life. And mixed martial arts came back around. You know, whatever popped in my head or made me think. And it was actually Trevor Howard, who gave me an in and said, hey, if I'm leaving this gym and I'm going over there to do other ventures. So when I leave this gym, there's an opening. I put a word in for it. If you want it, you got it. And he kept up that word. So to tie all this in, had I not stepped up and started combat sports, way back when, in 2012 or 2011, whenever I started, and had I not tried it out because of whatever circumstance was going on and got into the cage, and had I not lost my first 2 fights, and then, the reasoning being behind that moment when I did what I did on that third fight for my friend and for the community, and then, kind of had the progression of what I did with the highs and the lows and everything in between, I wouldn't be here today doing what I'm doing today. I didn't know what doors and what opportunities and what options were going to open up. I just took action. And I'm nowhere near where I want to be. I'm not sitting here acting like I'm some fucking, Scrooge McDuck, you know what I mean, telling all my Disney DuckTales. I'm just saying to you that, like, I live a fucking good life. I live a very fulfilling life. You know what I mean? Is it hard? Yes. Is there massive challenges and hills to climb and mountains to over? Yeah, of course. There's so much. Life is going to life regardless of you're doing what you're going to do or you're not. Life is going to do what life does. And that's kick you in the dick every single chance it gets with stuff you didn't think that was ever going to happen. But to be able to overcome those challenges and obstacles and be able to impact so many people and live such a substance-filled life. And dude, like the opening the gym has brought so much to my life, so much character, so much value. And then like the things that I've done, man, I've been across the world. I've been to London. I've been to Ireland. I've been to Costa Rica. I've been to Colombia. I've been to Mexico. I've been to Hawaii. I got married in Hawaii and had my not just my marriage, but a designated wedding and my honeymoon. Man, I've been to California. I've been to Vegas. I've been Texas countless times. I've been across the country, across the world, seeing things and talking to people. I've been involved in so many different, great, amazing things that I would have never had the opportunity or the mind space to be able to think of doing these things if it wasn't for taking action and getting into mixed martial arts. The combat sports gym is a very, very small profit margin business, right? The gym business in itself has a very small profit margin. But to be able to utilize that as a vessel and as a way to put me into other places, like with the real estate team and with all these other great places. I've met some incredible people, man. I'm in this mastermind called Apex. Met some incredible people in there. Ryan Stewman's been nothing but good to me. He owns it. He's given me massive game. I love that group. Love the people in there. I've sat here and met people that like I would have never got a chance to sit in a room with and talk to. And it isn't on their cheese dick like, hey buddy, how you doing? It's like very authentic and real conversations, real type of situations that, yes, I had to earn my right to get there and I had to earn my ability to be in front of these people, but also I would have never been able to do that had I not been in this position. The combat sports gym give me the ability to start a podcast and deliver free value for you guys. It's amazing because you don't know what's on the other side when you take action and walk through those doors of fear. You don't know. And it's not always what you think and how you think it's going to work out. I literally was in jail concocting this plan that I'm just going to train fighters. Understand me, I was not a champion. My record was 2-4. I had no jiu-jitsu belt, no karate belt. I had no real credentials. I just fought 7 times, 2-4-1. There was nothing that was special about me and gave me credentials and validations to be able to sit here and say, I'm going to coach people and teach them how to get in the cage. What, teach them to lose, right? But as I took that plan and that idea and I wrote it down and I went out there and went after it, different opportunities and different doors started to open up. It's once you start really thinking about what you want and thinking about what you want to do, what you're committed to, that's when you start seeing the angles that you didn't see before. They were always there, but you just didn't notice them because you were too distracted by all the other noise going on and not looking at the signals. So once you start really committing to what it is that you want to do and what it is that your dreams are, and you really hyper focus on that, and that's what you become obsessed with, then you'll see the the other angles and opportunities that'll pop up. So as though I was a losing fighter and I had a mediocre record and no real credentials, that put me into the space where I could get around people who did, and I could start learning. I took jiu-jitsu with Miles Moffitt at Southside Jiu-Jitsu. You know, I was able to meet, you know, Carmelo Guerrero, who was a standout boxer in our area. You know, I was able to meet other coaches that were really awesome and that I had the privilege of training with. You know, it was just a way out of the life that I was in. You know, there's a lot of statistics showing a lot of inmates go back to jail when they come home. And a lot of that's because they don't change their people, places, and surroundings. And they go back to what's they're used to, because that's what's easiest for them, is what they're used to. And I had many nights where I wanted to get back on that phone and call my connect and fix all my financial problems, because it was so hard. And I was in uncharted territory and I was in murky waters I've never been into. I had many times where I wanted to go back and fuck somebody up because they did something or said something or violated or whatever, because that's how I operate. I operate out of a space of violence. There was many times where, you know, I thought that I could make a little play on the side, but I knew if I did that, I knew if I went there and made one fucking play, I knew that that's what I would be back doing, because that would be my excuse to go back and do that anytime I needed to, because I would have thought I was smarter than the system. But because I just took action and I went down the routes of the hard path, the hard way, doing the hard shit every single day, it has benefited me and produced things that I would have never been able to produce myself. And obviously my faith with God. You know, my faith with God has been so important and impactful. And, my relationship with my wife, because she was there through it all. You know, I think that having a strong relationship, and we've been through some hell and back, me and her. We have been through hell and back, but we have a strong foundation and a sense of we're going to figure this out regardless. Your faith with God and your higher power, and then just the ability to sit here and go through doors that you know that are scary, that are uncomfortable, that are unfamiliar, and being able to chase your shit and chase your dream to go after what you want in life. These are the things that you have no fucking clue is going to open up for you and help you do things that you never thought you could do before. And I'm a walking testament of that. And I wanted to share this podcast with you guys so that you guys could kind of get some perspective on where all this stuff took place and what's possible for you. This ain't no hunky-dory, rah-rah bullshit. You got to do the work. You got to show up and do the work. You got to go through the fire to be forged in steel. But you can't sit back and expect it to be easy if you want something that's great. If you want something that's great, if you want greatness, if you want something that's better and bigger and more satisfying and gratifying than you've ever had, you got to expect it to be hard, and you can't give up. So, not really sure what you guys got from that. I'm hoping you guys got a lot from that. If you did, or if you know somebody that would get something from this, share it with them. Let them hear it. Let them know about, what I said on this podcast, and see if that can help give them perspective as well. I love what I do, and I love helping people, and I love building, and I love all the things. I love business. I'm competitive. I love it all. But I love the fact that I get to go home and my family's proud of me. My city's proud of me. My kids are proud of me. I love the fact that I'm proud of myself. I'm not where I want to be and nowhere near, but man, you'd have told me that night when I sat here and I decided to donate my purse to my friend and her foundation for her daughter, that I'd be sitting right here today talking on a podcast to millions of people. You would, I'd have told you you're a fucking joke. You're lying. Because I couldn't even fathom even thinking about anything remotely close to doing this. I couldn't even fathom just talking on a talking to a camera to the world. And here we are today. Champ Talk with Branden Hudson. So guys, I love you. Thank you for listening. I always appreciate you guys. Again, like we ask every episode, man, please like and subscribe. Give us a review. That's really critical, and share this with people. Get this out. Let people see this. And until next time, guys, what are you doing today to become a champion?